Thank you, India Culture Lab. And this is the first, and this is an unprecedented thing because for the first time in my readings, there are more men than women. And that is so exciting.
So we should clap for all the men in the audience.
Yeah, this is fabulous. So I'm already plotting about what bits I should change now to read so that it hits at the right spot.
So the way we're going to do this conversation, we're going to have a conversation as well as Lalita's going to read excerpts. So I thought the way we format it is that I would ask her some questions and then she would respond and then she would maybe read an excerpt. Going to the Q&A thing, right from the title is so explicit. It says I'm pregnant, not terminally ill, and you idiot there for emphasis. And in the book you talk about raging hormones, you talk about libido highs, you talk about sex a lot, the need to fart, large breasts, mood swings, the difficulty of peeing while wearing a salwar, and the whole drawstring. So it's really, this notion of pregnancy being this beautiful, idealistic, halo kind of thing is ripped to shreds with your book. And I was just wondering that it certainly provides for humor and satire. But besides wanting to break through these cliches, why did you decide to write such a provocative book and just reveal just so much?
Okay, first of all, I never thought that the first book that I will ever write will be a book on pregnancy. I thought I was too cool and maybe I'll write a book about dating or relationships or something before that. But it so turned out that my first book is a book on pregnancy. The funny thing that happened during my pregnancy is that I realized that the more books I read about the what to expect and conception and pregnancy and delivery and 50 questions and so many things and the things you should know and what happens to a woman above 35 and all that. And the bit I found intriguing was that a lot, and which I relived through my pregnancy, and I realized that women were not speaking the entire truth. Even when they were speaking the truth, it was always camouflaged and sort of the gory bits were sort of always sort of wrapped under a veneer of clinical information. When do the lungs form? When does the heart form? And when does the fetus assume a size of an aubergine or an avocado or a lemon? And at what month does this happen, and which test is done in which month, and how to pack a baby bag and stuff like that. These were the things that I could read one website and get it in 10 minutes. I mean, if I really wanted that kind of information. But what I didn't get from anywhere was that what that happens to a pregnant woman during the course of a pregnancy, which nobody talks about. I found that to a large extent, it's a very devious sort of state to be in, because on one level you are upgraded, you are bestowed this halo, you are this sort of Zen, you're sort of granted the Zen state of this beatific mom who is going to be all happy smiles and so serene and so radiant and glowing all the time and not an evil thought in her and all of that. And on the other hand, you are downgraded in a sense that you suddenly don't count. You are sort of marginalized in this very strange way where people don't take your opinion into account. You at workspaces, you're normally treated that in a manner that you are in passing, that you are just going to hang around for a bit and then you'll go home to be this lovely mother, perfect motherhood that's going to happen to you. So it's almost like everything that you do and feel and think is viewed through this baby lens. And this lens that has been forcibly sort of stuck on you because everything, you sort of lose your personhood. You lose you. You lose the you of you, if anybody is a fan of Dr. Seuss. Which I found really troublesome because I thought that, I am still me. I still exist. I am not my bum. I am not my belly. I am not my baby either. I am I am the same person. I just have, the added responsibility of growing another human being inside me, but don't stop factoring me, and I think that it was time to say the truth. It was time to say it like it is, and it was time to sort of delve into these issues that are so well sort of brushed under the carpet. And I mean, there are so many issues about how pregnant women are treated at the workspace, how new mothers are not really welcome, except in spaces like Godrej, I guess, where the attitude towards new mothers and mothers in general or children is more sort of holistic and encompassing and
inclusive. We're going to talk about that, afterward in the discussion area as well. So.
But in a lot of ways, I thought that these things, and about so many things about how your sex life changes, how irreversible the whole child phenomenon is, and how it's not really this Yashraj Karan Johar sort of bubble wrapped thing where you just wear these lovely saris and somebody does a god barai and then it's all happily ever after. And most importantly, how your relationship with your spouse changes, and what really goes into parenting and bringing a child into this world. I didn't find any space to read it, so I decided to write it myself. And since humor has always been my defense mechanism because it helps me deal with the world in a slightly better way, I thought I'll put in, I'll write it in my trademark style and not make it a guide or an educative book. It is that in a sense. I mean, you can take what you want from it, but it's more a memoir. It's more an investigation into why things happen the way they do and how can we sort of circumvent this and still be sane women and human beings in this world. So.
Can you read one of these funny, sexy, provocative passages?
I was going to read something else, but since I saw so many bumps, I think I'm going to read from this chapter, which sort of summarizes what I said about how you become the carrier and you become the bump, and you're not you anymore. You are just your bump. The chapter is called "That's My Bump. Talk to Me." Where people, anybody has access into your life, whether it's your driver, your maid, your mother-in-law's cousins, sisters, neighbor, whether it's your, the man, the lift man. Anybody can just stop you and give you advice and tell you what to do, how to live, what to wear, how to, anything. I mean, it just, you are just open for all. You are like this sort of, as if you're wearing a placard that says, "Talk to me, I'm open for advice 24 hours, like this strange kind of ATM. So, the thing is, when you find out you're pregnant, for the first 3 months, there's this whole superstition thing where you're not supposed to tell anyone, and in any case, you don't show, so it's easy to do that sort of charade. And then after that, at some point you have to announce. So the before and after is very interesting because in the beginning you're pregnant, but you're still behaving in a certain way because you have not declared it, and then after that you find out that you were better off with your secret because suddenly everybody is in your universe. So I'm just talking about that transition in this bit. Initially it's all fun, but soon you will begin to realize that you were better off with the secret. Because now it's no longer about you. It is all about the bump. Your pregnancy is now for public consumption. If you have been a largely private person who doesn't always look for attention or approval, you might find the fuss claustrophobic. And it's nothing you can be coy or cryptic about because now it's all out there and everyone seems to have a right to information. Everyone feels something about the pregnant woman. It could be faint amusement, or affection, disdain, envy, or just curiosity. The belly is now another entity, quite separate from you, but generally the object of discussion. So you could be really big or hardly showing, and you know what they are talking about. Somewhere in the 5th or the 6th month of your pregnancy, you stop existing. It is as though you might as well have been somewhere else. or had an out-of-body experience of sorts, because no one really cares about you. They are all talking to the bum. It is as though you are your bum, and that's all the identity you have. Nothing is about you anymore, what you think, what you feel, who you are. Some of them don't even have a real conversation with you. They look at you, look at the bum, look at you again, as if to say, is that what I think it is? Once you get used to pregnancy lingo, it's more of the same. Someone says, are you? And then you say, yes. Then she says, how many months? Then you say, 26 weeks. Is that 6 months? No, it's 26 weeks. Oh, point understood. And if you do something out of character in your new avatar, like use swear words, or randomly start shaking a leg at an office party, or have a glass of wine, or jump into the pool, you will be treated as some sort of weirdo. Is it okay for the baby? Suddenly, no one is discussing sexual politics with you, or relationship blues, or office romances, or even dating dynamics. You are out of the radar, off limits, almost holier than thou. Even your best friends have stopped talking to you about stuff you used to talk about. All they are interested in is, how does it feel? Is it kicking? Of course, good things happen too. You have random niceties happening at work. People are opening doors for you. People stop smoking around you. The office boy brings you tea before you ask for it, exactly the way you want it. People who never smiled at you in corridors begin to smile. More questions will continue in the months to follow, depending on the degree of familiarity. How do you know if the baby is sleeping or awake? Is it true that you can sense the baby eating your food? Can you tell where the head is and where the legs are? Does the baby punch? Can it smile, laugh? Does it have hair yet? Will you let me touch you when it kicks? How does the baby pee? Poo? The women who've been there, done that, are usually more clinical. Who's your gynac? Which hospital? How's the blood work? All good? Have you had any thyroid, water retention, acidity, gestational diabetes? Have you had your nuchal scan yet? What about triple marker? Anomaly? BART? Are you doing an amnio? How many sonographies? Any placenta previa? No bed rest, I hope. What about pigmentation? And the best, has it engaged?
So I want to ask the next question about, a lot of the book is about, so it's about your life, but is this the mic?
Would you hear me?
Yeah, but we're recording it, so yours is working.
Hello.
Keep going in and out.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, at a certain angle, yeah.
Okay, and should I really shout?
Should we?
Or no? I'll ask my question with this mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear. Very good.
So, a lot of the book is about your own life and specifically your relationship with your husband. And in lots of it, whether you're discussing, even on your blog, whether you discuss why do men marry at all, or in this book when you're talking about, how he sends you misuse messages on the phone, or the way you talk about your sex life, or the way you talk about the myth of the hands-on daddy, for example. So I'm just wondering how he feels with you placing so much of him, so much of your own personal life with him out there in the book. Like, does he welcome it? Is he like, I can't believe you said this? Just tell me a little bit more about that. And then following that, read out something. Preferably, the bit I love the most was about their sex life. But so if you want to read out that bit, that would be great, or some other bit. But tell me about that relationship at home because it's so close and intimate.
First of all, my husband thinks the book is dedicated to him because he's very happy to think that he's the idiot that I'm talking about. Initially, I thought I'd explain to him that it's metaphorical and it's a collective noun, it can be anybody and blah blah. And then later I thought, maybe if he wants to believe that it's about him, let it be because it helps him feel good. But jokes aside, you know what? I I married really late, and I was like a sort of confirmed singleton for years. I mean, I was a black sheep of the family, and my mother got tired of telling me to settle, 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 and then, finally, I mean, I think when it reached that point where it no longer mattered, and everyone had sort of written me off, I actually announced that I was getting married. And then I used to write this column called Chick Wit in the Hindustan Times, and it started before I was married. So it's an interesting piece of, collection of work, because it sort of tracks my entire trajectory from when I was single and dating to a relationship, to married, to pregnant, to mother, to whatever. But the way I looked at this whole marriage relationship thing was that, if it doesn't give me material to write, then what's the point? So I told my husband right in the beginning that he's going to be featured a lot, because I had just started writing Shakespeare when I started dating him. And, I had to churn in a column every week, and most of the time it's like, what do you write about? And then you realize the easiest thing to write about is your life, and there were lots of funny things happening, and he was a very good source of material, and he continues to be. And at every point, whenever I thought that I had revealed a little too much in my writing, I would ask him, was that okay? And and he's like, yeah, of course, I feel celebrated and this and that. And I was like very, I was really touched and gratified that he gave me like this sort of open waiver, And so I kept writing about him, about the marriage, about the pregnancy, about him during the pregnancy, about him after, him being a father and everything. And it's funny that a lot of fans that I had who would write to me, they started taking up for him. And they were like, how can you write about your husband like this? And how can you make fun of him? And poor thing, and what must he be going through, and blah blah, and whatever. And every time I would get a mail like that, I would go back to thee and say, I got this mail, but are you sure you were okay? And he would like, yeah, I mean, what's there, and whatever. And so I actually started showing him my copy before sending it in, just in case he had a point of view, and he said, just go for it. And so even the book, there are lots of bits about him, and I told him before I sent the manuscript for final publishing, like, maybe you should just take a look, because this is a book. It's going to live forever, A column just comes and goes. If the paper goes in the raddi, it's lost. I mean, there's the internet, of course, but still. And he's like, no, I mean, what's there? I mean, you're writing about us, and you're writing about me, and I'm your favorite idiot, so fine. So I've written a lot of stuff about.
So will you read us a bit about your favorite edition?
Yeah. So I'll read. One second.
Nice masala.
Okay, I'll read about the sex bit, which is
Public domain.
very popular.
And you can read other bits. Maybe the hands-on husband. Or
Yeah. So this is
for all the others, we're not.
I know. I wanted to write about this more because I think sex during and after baby, and during pregnancy and after baby, is a very sort of, it's a topic that's, it's put in a Godrej safe and kept somewhere because nobody wants to talk about it. And everyone just pretends that everything is absolutely perfect, just the same, and blah, blah, blah. And then some, one little germ of conversation may just lead someone to say that, oh my God, we haven't done it in 6 months, and immediately, lots of things come out from the closet. I decided not to be coy about it because I was like, I've always been writing about things as they were, so I'm just going to say it like it is. But I noticed one thing very peculiar, that, when you are pregnant, your sexual desire and appetite is almost considered as a luxury, and that it's almost dismissed and not really reckoned with, because, how can you, you are going to be a mom and all, how can you have all these, how can you even have a libido? So you don't talk about it. But post the baby, everyone almost collectively conspires for you to have sex again really soon, because they're like, what if the husband strays, because of no sex? And I think a lot of, Tiger Woods has a lot to do with this because of all his wrongs, whatever. But I just found it quite sexist that, it's always what a man wants that's more important than what a woman wants. And I also found that the whole sex thing becomes, it is a logistical nightmare. It's more than going for the school concert and what costume should the child get, how to get the costume together, whatever. It is more logistical than that, and nobody talks about it. So I'm going to just read something about that. Once upon a time, there was a boy and there was a girl. They met, fell in love, got married, had lots of noisy sex, and thought they'd live happily ever after. Then they decided to have a baby. So they had intense, not so noisy sex for days and weeks until the girl announced she was pregnant. End of noisy and not so noisy sex. It is true that babies can bring two people together in the sense that it forms a completely new bond between the new parents. They just created a whole new human being. And by any standards, that's a big deal. And then babies have this thing of being so vulnerable and need so much caring and looking after that even if you're not a very collaborative couple, you end up doing stuff together. But it is also true that it does make couples drift apart, and unless you really work on the intimacy, it is possible to get engrossed in baby stuff and totally forget that there is one more person to factor in, the person you made the baby with. Funnily enough, the one thing that caused the baby to happen in the first place is the one thing that is conspicuous by its absence largely during and after pregnancy. Sex, for the most part, becomes a thing of low priority, both by choice and by circumstance. So pregnancy and motherhood are like a sexual sabbatical in parts. For the first 3 months, you are ridden by queasiness and lethargy and moody hormones, so you don't feel like it, and are often advised by the doctor to take it easy. For the next 3 months, you are on overdrive because your body is ripe and voluptuous, you are in a good hormones phase, and generally delicious and desirable for your partner. At the pinnacle of your pregnancy, you are like a bitch on heat. You feel extra horny, you have boobs, a great body image, you're always lubricated, you're very easily turned on, you have good hair days, and mostly feel very sexy. You also cannot get any more pregnant, so contraception is not a concern anymore. There is just one small problem. You don't get laid enough. Plus, you want George Clooney. My husband had issues. It feels wrong, like I'm making love to my baby. Or like there's someone else in the room watching us. And what if there's too much pressure on the baby? I scream my lungs out. The amniotic sac is impervious to orgasmic and other sounds and pressures, damn it. It didn't go down too well. Worse, me screaming like a banshee was sexually the most unattractive thing. So while I was hot and heavy, Dee was now intimidated by the belly and the baby within. I, on the other hand, reached a point where I was ready to do it to anyone, anywhere. All those women whose husbands made love to them till the 9th month, I officially hated. Now the funny thing is, the whole table, there's a whole turn of tables post-baby. Suddenly, he's the bitch on heat and you are the one saying no. Plus nursing and bonding with the baby supplies the feel-good hormones that sex usually provides you with. So technically, you have no use for a man, for the time being. To top it all, you're so sleep deprived that any open window for sex makes you long for sleep. And you're still sore and healing and everything hurts and your body feels like it needs to be sent to a garage. Your vagina hasn't had much action in a while and might need to be lubricated unless you want to feel like a virgin all over again. Your breasts hurt and any overstimulation in that area could only lead to a spurt of you-know-what. Your erogenous zones are protesting. Your G-spot has temporarily relocated to a place of unknown existence. Most importantly, where did you put your libido? You're liberated from belly body status, on the other hand, has increased your partner's libido several fold. By this time, he also realizes that it has been a while. The next few months are about logistics, when to do it, where to do it, technicalities, what lubrication to use, and existentialism. There's no time for foreplay because the baby might wake up any minute, so we may as well get on with it. Also, unless you're really ready to have back-to-back babies, there's no room for error in the contraception department. So it takes the whole piss out of the sex thing for a while. Wait, there's more. He can't have sex with the baby in the room. You can't have sex with the baby in the other room. And should your planetary charts conspire and you do get hot and heavy, what about protection? Our sexual rendezvous would go something like this. Babe, do you think this Saturday afternoon we could have like a wild sex date? Yes, I think 1 to 3 p.m. is a good window because Ray will be sleeping and the maid also takes a nap. Great. Come Saturday 1 p.m. and there would be some match on television and the husband would be 3 beers down and a couch potato when I would remind him of our sex date. Oh no, maybe tomorrow morning. I'm really not into it right now. How about tonight, after the baby sleeps? There's a manual match.
And it goes on and on, but for the rest of it, you should buy the book. But it's really funny.
All the masala.
About their friends and about everything else. It's really funny. We're going to park that for a bit, and we can come back to it later. But given that this is an office, and given that this is and you were very, you praised Godrej. In fact, I read about Amrita, this character in this book, and I only now realize that she's actually Anirudh's Amrita, and she's the one, and Amrita runs the daycare center at Godrej. So I didn't know that this exemplar of, that she was talking about, a good corporation, is actually Godrej, which I only discovered now. And so she's talked about, that one chapter itself called Work Bitches. I mean, I love the whole chapter, but in which you really touch upon, maternity leave, policies that companies have towards women at large, and how progressive companies should, avoid putting their female population into this place where they have to choose between a career or their personal life. So maybe I want to spend now the next few minutes talking about this, given that we are in a corporation. But before that, you want to read out an excerpt from that chapter, and then maybe we can open it up to discussion. I love the whole chapter, but
yeah, but
yeah.
One thing that I found really strange post having a baby is that companies, most Indian companies, and I'm sure this is the case abroad because I've heard a lot of people writing to me and saying that it almost makes you feel that most corporations don't want to take into account that women have a biological cycle and they at some point will get married and will get pregnant and will have babies and will still be the same people, so will want to work. They somehow are in denial of this fact. And I find it really strange because almost 50% of the population in any given organization, like I used to work with a media house, and 40% of the workforce was women, and yet when I went after resuming my maternity leave to ask for a nursing room, first of all, they didn't know what it was, and then they balked when I said that, I want a space which is private, where I can go and express milk, because I want to continue nursing my baby, and, I think you should help me with this. Now, luckily for me, the lady, the HR person was a lady, and she empathized, and also, she appreciated my need to, wanting to continue with my nursing, and she made it possible. So there was a cabin which was, a mini conference room which was taped up with, posters and masked and whatever, and I had a key and I could go in. But what I found amazing was that in 85 years of existence of that company, not one woman had gone to ask for this and knowing that it was her right to ask for it. And I saw in front of my eyes two of my predecessors in the pregnancy chain, one of whom had a baby like just 2 months before me, and one about 6 months, resuming their maternity leave. And obviously you are in that state where you're trying to balance, like, one more human being in your life itself is a complication. Now if that human being is someone who needs your attention 24/7 and is small and vulnerable, it is even more complicated, and you take time to work out the logistics and get everything together. So there will be times when you may want to leave early, or you may want to work from home and stuff like that. But every time someone came up with a request like that, they were asked to choose work or baby. Now I don't think, I come from a very different space. My mother went to work when I was 28 days old. She worked for 38 years in the same company. Incidentally, she started her career in Godrej in the school. She taught here for 2 years, way back in the 60s. But after that, she continued to work in another school for 36 years. And she balanced work. She had me, she had twins after me. Of course, the fact remained that my father was very hands-on and stuff like that. But I thought that if my mother could have a career and enjoy her work and be an equal mother at her time, why is it so difficult for me now? And why do I have to choose? But I kept seeing this around me all the time. And I always, and the more I talk to people, I talk to a lot of people for this chapter, and the answer I got from most of them was that there is a 12-week paid maternity leave policy, which is legally, what is the right of every woman. But beyond that, companies are not really liable to do anything for you. If they do it, it's from the goodness of their whole, corporation or whatever, or their larger belief in, stuff like that. But otherwise, they are not expected to facilitate your coming back to work. They are not expected to provide for daycare. They are not expected to ease your coming back into the workspace. It is not their problem. And there were few corporations that did this. One of them was Godrej, and I spoke to somebody, and I think Hindustan Lever has a daycare facility. A couple of foreign banks have started it, but it's still very, very minuscule. It's maybe 0.1% of the entire corporate presence in India. And I think it's really unfair, because men never have to choose. Men can, being a father does not really affect a man's life as much as being a mother affects a woman's life. And even if two people in a relationship are equally successful at their workspace and in their career and whatever, it's always the woman who has to make the choice. So I feel that there should be, companies should get more empathetic towards this, and I hope that this book shakes up at least, even if it shakes up one organization, it's still worth my time. And to at least facilitate the transition, to at least not be so cold and clinical about it, because we are the people who are contributing to the GDP of the nation. We are producing children so that they go out and be productive, and the economy of the country will improve. If we are treated like this, then what is to be told about the country, and what is to be told about our future? There's nothing. So the least a company can do is to be empathetic towards women in the workspace after they have children, and to make the transition viable, possible, as friendly as it can be. And after that, if she prefers to be a stay-at-home mother, it should be her choice. It should not be forced upon her, and it should not be a circumstantial thing. I think it's really unfair. And so I'm going to read, this chapter makes me very emotional, because it's one of those things that I really battled, and that really shook me, because nobody tells you this, and they all make it out to be that, oh, I'm so happy. See, I did stay-at-home motherhood for 4 years. I really enjoyed it. I was a hands-on mom. I spent a lot of time with my child and all of that. But the thing is, I could afford to do it because I decided I had reached that point where, okay, if this is what I have to do, then I'm going to make the most of it. Then I'm going to do it in a happy space, not because I was forced to do it. But a lot of women are forced to make that choice, which is not right. And the whole thing is about whatever choice you make, you're still like damned if you do and damned if you don't, you know. If you continue to work, you're this cold, aggressive, ambitious mother who chose to leave her baby for her job. If you stay at home, then you're treated as this, oh my God, you know, she has no career and she's living off her husband and what does she do all day? And what do you do all day? Which is something you're always asked when you're a stay-at-home mother. What do you do? Like, you know, like, if you actually have to compute everything that a stay-at-home mother does, then it's probably 24 hours would be too little to factor that in. But it's, you know, we all know how. So either ways, you are under scrutiny, which is even worse than what the situation is.
If you can read, I mean, I love the whole chapter, so read as much as.
Okay. There are ways and ways of negotiating motherhood, and there is no right or wrong way about any of them. There are those like my mother who get on with it, leave the baby with the family and formula, and go on about their jobs. She was a school teacher, so her hours were good. She loved her job and she retired from the same school 36 years later. There are others who do daycare, nannies, grandparents, or a combination thereof, depending on what their sanity or salary can afford. There are those who, like me, decide that jobs can be got back, the baby time can't, and plunge into full-time baby care. If you do the former, you're often looked at skeptically as someone who chose career over motherhood, money over emotional bonding, bottle over breast. If you choose the latter, you're looked upon as someone who was using motherhood as an excuse to sit at home and do nothing, who is an emotional sucker waiting to be manipulated by her child, who wanted out of the rat race and has found her way. Not that quitting work is an option for most women. You need a partner who's willing to put the bread on the table. Sometimes jam and cheese too, for an indefinite period of time while you play primary caregiver to the baby. So damned if you do and damned if you don't. Your reasons for going back could be as compelling as your reasons for staying at home. Money, of course, is the biggest reason, considering that 2 incomes are better than 1, now that there's an additional member in the family. But the mathematics of being a stay-at-home mother are quite different for a woman who has a baby at, say, 23, or one who has it at 39, which I did. For one, the monies at stake are much higher, the career graph is at a different place. There is much more to give up. Lifestyle, a fancy home, exotic holidays, Ivy League schools for the child, designer wear for you. While the 23-year-old mommy will hardly be missed at her workplace, the same will not be true for the 39-year-old. Her role would be more pivotal, her meter ticking with greater intensity, and the company is busy computing the losses it incurs on account of her being away. You could well be the 1 in a million woman whose husband opts to and can be a stay-at-home daddy. Otherwise, men never have to deal with sticky situations, sticky negotiations and parenting issues on the work front. They're as good as new post-fatherhood, and nothing really changes about their life, work or otherwise. Your working life, on the other hand, will be a negotiation on a daily basis. The maid doesn't turn up. Who takes a day off? The baby is sick. Who stays at home? The baby has to be picked up from daycare. Who rushes out from office? 9 out of 10 times, it is you. The Indian labour law prescribes a compulsory paid maternity leave of 12 weeks to all female employees. No company is liable to offer anything more than this. If they do, it's an act of philanthropy. Most companies treat motherhood as some sort of exotic hobby or incurable disease the woman has suddenly developed, and not as a natural progression of single to married to pregnant to mother. I've heard, of course, that a few corporates, IT companies, banks, and NGOs are empathetic about this transition and do offer extended leave, sabbaticals, flexi-time options, consultancy options, and even daycare facilities. But it is still a small minority. By and large, women have come to terms with the fact that yes, there are compromises post-baby, and putting career on hold is probably one of them. One mommy who quit her high-ranking job soon after the baby was magnanimous enough to say that she didn't expect the organization to make those compromises for her, nor did she expect to be paid for having a child. I was shocked at the lack of dissent. I felt a ray of hope hearing Vinita's story. Both the companies she worked for since her pregnancy and through her child's infancy had daycare. The option, I think one of these companies was Godrej. I think the other one was Stanchart, if I'm not mistaken. The option to work flexi time and extended leave of up to 6 months. I was lucky, she said, but why should it be about luck or being blessed? Why can't companies factor in motherhood when hiring women and have policies laid down so that it's not a case-to-case negotiation with one's superior? Why can't pregnancy and motherhood be treated as a natural phase of a working woman's life? My friend Amrita, who runs a daycare, says she has seen a significant change in company policies in the 8 years since she began her service. More and more had daycares on site. A few were considering flexi-time options as a mode to keep women from quitting. It's a start, no doubt. But elsewhere, companies still have an all-or-none policy and are largely unwilling to negotiate working terms for a new mother. I have known several women who were forced to quit as a result of this. It is not a part of the company policy, they are told. We can't make an exception for you. It is as though organizations do not want to acknowledge the logistics that comes with motherhood. It is treated as some sort of exotic inconvenience, and they would rather you deal with it separately from work. It is tough to fathom how companies with a 50% female workforce have no contingency plan for new mothers, like it was a natural calamity they were totally unprepared for. So one day, the maternity leave reaches its expiry date and extensions are no longer possible. You've used up all your leave categories like sick leave, privilege leave, and casual leave. Your mother has reached fatigue point and is threatening to leave, and your third baby made in 3 months has just quit. And it's time to go to work. One of the first things that strikes you when you go back to work is that the honeymoon period is over. You are no longer pregnant and cute, which means you are no longer wearing your baby on your sleeve. So you no longer enjoy the small privileges that come with it, like excusing yourself from an utterly pointless video conference because you were feeling sick or had a sonography appointment. No matter how resilient you are, most women are in shock at the callousness at work on returning from their maternity leave. In several subtle and not so subtle ways, being pregnant at the workplace seems to indicate that you no longer count, that you are now someone who's just passing through. You may or may not continue working. You may be too preoccupied with baby thoughts to focus on your career. What you don't realize is that right from the time you were pregnant, the tone for your eventual marginalization has been set. If it can happen to Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, it can happen to you. We all know about the heroine throwing out and whatever. Should I read more or?
Should we open for questions?
It's a long
Should
chapter.
we read some more?
Or should we just open it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think this is a good point considering we are in a workplace to actually open up for questions. So if you have questions, otherwise I can keep on asking, but I think now, yeah, no, well I have two, and this works too. So just raise your hand and I'll come to you with a mic. Or I'll keep on asking more questions. There's a question there? Oh. Yeah, okay.
I think more than a question, it is around the attitude that you were talking about in the workplace. I work in a consulting firm. So this is a general trend that I've seen. So a couple of my colleagues, they were pregnant, they came back from their maternity leaves, and that incidentally matched with the appraisal cycle. So these guys got promoted. I mean, those two women got promoted. So what I've seen is that across board, colleagues, my fellow colleagues, they were like, this lady went for a maternity leave, she comes to us, she becomes a manager. So I don't know how that was viewed as negative, I mean, she had to go through that, and I mean, she was promoted for the work that she's done before that. So I think more than the, apart from the organization point of view, it is also within employees, the view or the attitude towards how they look at the whole maternity leave period. I think that has to change probably.
Yeah, you're right. Many times it is your work colleagues who look at you with disdain, thinking that you're using maternity or pregnancy to get the easy way out or something like that. Like for instance, when I came back, I thought I couldn't handle a newspaper. I was working in a daily. And I asked for a transfer, I was transferred into a weekly with the same group. And I thought, since I would have production only once or twice a week, it would be easier. Now, there would be times when, there wasn't enough to do. Like, maybe there was just one page because we got lots of ads, and there were already 3 of my colleagues who were working on it. And it would be like 12:30 in the night, and there's some page which has not come from Delhi, and so we are all waiting collectively, praying. And if I would ask if I could leave because it was 12:30 and you've come into work at say 10 o'clock in the morning and you have a little baby at home, your boss would tell you, like my boss at that time said that if I do this, then others will also start asking, and I couldn't see who the others were. But I thought that she was being harder on me just because, I was a new mom, and it was almost like they're trying to punish you for sort of swimming against the tide or something like that, or I don't know. It's a very callous attitude, but it does happen. It does happen. And like you're talking about promotion now, this woman who went on maternity leave maybe had done an incredibly good job in the whole of the last year, because your appraisal is based on the entire financial year. But just because her timing was such that she came back, she is looked upon with some kind of skepticism about whether she got it because they, it's like a consolation prize, or whether she got it because she deserved it. And, I think there should be more empathy at the workplace among colleagues. I mean, people should be willing to help each other out, and this whole one-man island phenomenon that everyone is getting into is like incredibly unhealthy, because at the end of the day, we all work in teams, nobody is productive just on their own, so it is sad, yeah, I agree with you.
Does anyone want to share any experiences, positive or negative, of things that we've done at Godrej or otherwise? Okay, so we go there and then to you. I'll bring you the mic.
Hi, so I've been reading your blog for the longest time, and I quite like the way you are raising waves. I'm in love with that. More than that, what your blogs have interestingly done, in fact I also have a book, and I do read it often whenever I get the time, and I'm 8 months down. So it's made us more aware. In fact when we were planning for a baby, we were reading about your blogs and the way you're writing, and I can somehow relate to you. So I made my husband also read it, and it also opens everybody's mind to what can exactly happen. and in what context. Because most of the things are all happy-go-lucky and all flowery and everything is so pretty and so cute, but the fact is not that. And people need to know that. So I feel it really helps and opens everybody's mind, especially people who are involved in it. So I would highly recommend reading her blogs and her books. It's quite interesting. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much.
Hi. So I just had a comment on the whole workplace thing which was being talked about. So while obviously, and you've also mentioned it in your book, and that at Godrej, the logistical part and in terms of the basic policy and so on, of course, it's much better than other companies and the general trend. But qualitatively, some of the things, the basic attitudinal issues, or out of sight, out of mind, and so what happens actually when you come back, and for mothers who have dealt with the logistical issues and are now ready to give their time and mind space to their work, and even in the limited mind space that they may have, because obviously the baby and other issues will be of time, but still it's the quality which should matter and not the quantity of time that you can spend in office. That may not necessarily come about just by policy or just because it's a nice company. That probably needs a conscious effort, not just on the company's part, but maybe on the part of the colleagues and so on. And that's something I think even at Godrej, I don't know about.
Specific instances where you want to share about where colleagues have made an effort and have made it either welcoming or the opposite.
So yeah, there are instances where people are not made to feel so welcome and so on. So even with all the policies and all the on paper things being good, there is this sort of brushing under the carpet when it comes to what exactly the person wants to do and is doing and so on.
Does anyone else want to share?
I have an observation. Is it cultural? I work with organizations where we have operations across various countries, and if a lady gets pregnant and she comes back to office, it used to be within a matter of a week, and it used to be normal. In terms of course, the organizational policies were conducive and all those things. When it comes to India, it's about 6 months maternity, which is necessary. But do you think in your research anywhere you found that it is more to do with, we talk about equality, which is great. And then we actually talk about saying we need to give specific leeways to ladies, which is also fine, which is important because the kind of culture that we are dependent. So what's your thought on that?
Okay. I think coming back to work in a week is physically impossible in any country. And it's incredible if you can do it. But the thing is, if women could do it, they would. If one could go back to, one is also, first of all, you've been, this whole pregnancy thing is so isolating and alienating in many ways that by the time you finish your 12-week maternity leave, most women are actually dying to go back to work because it's like an imprisonment. It's continuous work. It's demanding. It's if you're there, you do it all the time and all that. So I'm sure that women would go back to work, and also a lot of people would choose to take the 12-week period in a different way. They would take maybe more time before, less time after, and all of that. But I think it should still be about, it should still be about when does the woman feel emotionally and physically ready to go back to work. And that can't be, if X did it, again it's this whole, this again puts women in this whole position of, let me get there fastest because other people are doing it. So they are doing it more out of pressure and out of fear of being left out than actually doing it out of a need for productivity or going back to work or whatever. So, what was your question?
Is it a cultural issue? You answered. It's all about the readiness of the women to get back or not.
I don't really think it's a cultural issue because in India, at least to some extent, we all have some support from our parents or in-laws. people are willing to come and stay with you and all that. So in fact, it should be easier, if at all. Whereas that's not the case in the West. You can't. So I guess, but on the flip side, the daycares and things like that are more organized there. They're more like every company has a facility. Like I have friends in the US who went to work like in 4 weeks, but they took their babies with them. They could leave them in the creche, just below their office, and keep checking on them every few hours. So everything is more streamlined and more organized and more available. So maybe we have this tendency to oversimplify things, and I think when you see people in the West, just wearing their babies and going to work and whatever, we think that, oh my God, if they can do it, why can't we do it? But it's not as simple as that. It's also about the logistics of the support systems and stuff like that, which need to be compared.
Yeah. So there's there, and then raise your hand. First one.
Just more than observation, I just wanted to comment. So I'm a mom of an 18-month-old, and been very lucky in the companies I've worked with. I mean, he said that should not be the case, but it has been, and I'm grateful for that, including Godrej, which I think has very, very good women-friendly, at least at the policy level. But I think that there is, our society places an enormous premium on the amount of time you spend at work. And that's not necessarily about women in pregnancy, it's per se that, we just glorify that. And I'll give you 2 examples, both in the pregnancy context. One is obviously Melissa Mayer, and, she was just glorified for, as Sujit said, she came back, she said she would come back to work in 2 weeks, she worked through those 2 weeks. Good luck to her if that's what she wanted, and she was able to do it great. Another one, and this could be politically incorrect, I'll quote an article that I read about Avani Davda, the CEO of Tata Starbucks. She, so when it was about, there was an article about how she made it to CEO when she was in her early 30s, which is great, and I'm sure she's brilliant at what she does. But one of the key points was in one of her earlier stints at the Tatas, and I know Sujit, if you know her or you can bear me out, the article, I think was in Economic Times, it said specifically, despite having a 9-month-old baby, she was willing to put in 13 hours a day at work. Now again, if that's choice, that's fine, but why is that glorified, and why is that seen as the only reason that she's made CEO? And it's not just about women being pregnant. If there's a guy who says, I want to learn the jazz guitar, and therefore I can only work 8 hours a day, but as long as I deliver. But that's not the way the corporate world, at least in India, sees it. And I've never worked abroad, but at least in India, that's the overwhelming sense I get. So is that something that you've seen? And
yeah, see, I think, at some level, women it's a very dichotomous situation. At some level, women are supposed to be the nurturers and the caregivers and all of that. But on the other hand, if women are seen as being too happy doing that, and it's like everyone always wants to change your point of reference as quickly as possible. So if you're doing X, then they are like, why isn't she doing Y? And I was asked by none other than my mother-in-law, I think somewhere after a year of staying at home, that aren't you going back to work? So I said, I will when I'm ready. So she said, but nowadays with one income it's not possible and all that. So I told her, the day my husband tells me that we can't do this with one income, I'll go back to work. But you're not the person who will tell me that. Now that was treated as, I was being my usual bitchy self. But the point is that everyone, we are always raising benchmarks for women all the time, and it just makes it more, I think it just makes it more difficult for them to surpass that, because the first thing is, every time Sheryl Sandberg or a Marissa Mayer or someone does X at this age and Y at that age and whatever, immediately references are drawn to, what have Indian women done and how are we comparing and stuff like that. But the point is that I think corporates are playing a different game at that level, because it's, if she has set that yardstick for herself and her company and her organization, then it's her personal yardstick. She can't be my yardstick. If someone, if Vijay Mia walked on the ramp after 3 weeks, I mean, and got her body back and wore a bikini, I can't be expected to do the same thing because I'm setting my own yardstick and my own benchmark, and I think we should all be allowed to not be subjected to so and so corporate bigwig did this and therefore it's again being subjected to a benchmark which is very unrealistic because her set of circumstances and mine are different, and why should it be about that? And why is this comparison always happening when women are concerned? Like, you are supposed to be the super this and the super that, so wherever you are lacking, you are immediately given a reference point and said, look how Marissa Mayer is doing it at this age and whatever. But the same thing never applies to men. You are never told that, has there ever been a case study about a stay-at-home daddy in the US who gave up his job, who was a billionaire of a company? You never read such stuff. Because it's all very colored. Even the media is projecting exactly what they want women to read, and then to feel even more marginalized because, oh my God, I can't be that person, I'm not as ambitious, so maybe something is lacking in me. And again, it's a fall, it's a step back in your own sort of.
And it's both ways. So since I'm an Aishwarya fan, sometimes they give her so much flack for like not losing weight after her baby. Like look, Shilpa Shetty lost it immediately after, and so on.
Yeah.
But if Shilpa Shetty loses too quickly, they're like, you lost it too quickly, couldn't you take more time?
Yes.
And Aishwarya is not losing it for a while, they're like, why is she taking so much time? So, question.
With all the empathy, care and concern shown by our company, so coming to the filmy one, Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, in one of the Malu films, an actress called Shweta Menon. Yeah, her pregnancy and childbirth was filmized. What is your take on that?
I haven't seen the film, but I've heard that it's been done very beautifully and that she wanted to do it. And also I feel sometimes that it's very interesting to document these kind of changes. I wish, for instance, this is me. This was shot when I was 37 weeks pregnant, okay? And it was very accidental. I was approached by Mother and Baby magazine to do this fashion feature, and we did 6 different costume changes, and with much trepidation they asked me, will I show my belly? And I said, okay, and we just made sort of, it was a very makeshift sort of costume. And I shot this, and many years later when the book was getting ready and we were bouncing ideas for covers, and I was like, nothing was really working for me, and I said, why don't I use this picture, because it's there. And I realized that I wish I had documented more, because for some women it's the only time in your life that you're going to be pregnant and you're going to have a baby. So I wish I had made a video, I had shot stuff, I had
It's fine.
I think it's absolutely fine. And now when you're saying this, I'm just reminded that, recently, someone reviewed my book and she said, she gave me a very good review and she said very nice things and blah, blah, blah. And I was like feeling quite happy. And then towards the end, she said 2 lines. She's like, but what's with the cover of this, what's with that shocking cover of that pregnant model and blah, 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 and it'll definitely make women uncomfortable. It'll definitely make people uncomfortable to pick it up and, stuff like that. And I was thinking to myself, there is such coyness about this whole thing. I don't understand. First of all, you're okay showing your vagina to some 15 people in the hospital when everybody is coming and checking you out. You're okay when you're, breastfeeding in public and, almost the entire city has seen your boobs. And then you have a problem putting a cover like this on the, you have a problem seeing this cover. So I don't get the duplicity. I really don't get it. And I don't get why, if you are going through a physical process which is so transforming and in which the belly is just part of that process, why are you shy about it? It is high time women came to terms with their body image.
It's a celebrity, it's a news. If it is a sex education film...
No, but for myself, in my life, in my mind, I am my celebrity. You celebrate yourself. Why should you wait for someone else to celebrate you? So I think it's absolutely okay. Nowadays people get baby portfolio shot and whatever, and I think it's absolutely okay. If you can document your wedding, why can't you document your pregnancy?
we'll have place for one more question. Okay, wait, I'll get you the mic.
Hi, I'm going to stick to the book. So there was a line where you said that how people treat you around you, that they weren't giving you enough emphasis after the pregnancy. And before the pregnancy, there was a whole celebrity who needs the extra care, the extra work. I've looked at evolution in a different way, and I've said that every time you look at evolution, you look at it from a 100-year perspective. So every 100 years, there's actually a change. So even in forward countries like the US, they've actually had a civil war for an entire evolution to take place, and people look differently at different things. In India, perspective, I worked for a bank very recently, about 4 or 5 years back, and I had a colleague who was pregnant, and she was not given travel. She was given travel allowance, but she was told to make arrangements for her own travel. So she got a taxi service. But unfortunately, the taxi service wasn't too great, and at some point in time, the taxi would turn up. The location of the office was in such a place, which was about 5 kilometers from her house. And when she'd go out to get an auto rickshaw, the auto rickshaw would refuse to go to her house, and she would spend about 1 hour trying to find a rickshaw, and finally sit down on the main road and cry. And then a taxi would take pity on her and take her home. So that's probably a problem that's unseen in corporates. Very difficult to see that situation. And this is a whole cultural change. This is like a change which I believe can come over a period of time when we accept the fact that women are equal to men, and they work in the organization, and they have a life at home, and the people at home are unacceptable to these things because of their traditional background, and they have to accept this change that's happening, that women will go to work, that they will have lives at work, and the corporate needs to accept that they have lives at home as well. So I don't know if every corporate can do this. It's very difficult for the corporate to see things like this, because nobody is sitting at 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening and saying how the employees get back home. They say, yes, we've given her travel allowance. If her taxi service does not come, she did make it home eventually, so I don't see an issue there. So over a couple of days, this entire problem is brushed off. And then the woman, obviously will say, okay, fine, I've been through it, it's not going to happen again. Maybe in the next kid, I will obviously take more care and try to find backup for my taxi service. I may earn an extra income and suffice for it. So certain problems corporates cannot see, and it's very hard for them to actually plan this in the life cycle of their employee and say that this is what we plan out for them. In the same scenario, for the person who's actually living this, for her to go through this, she must understand there's a cultural change that's happening. And during that change, it's impossible for a lot of things to happen post the pregnancy, to get those goodies past the pregnancy, because people will see her differently. And I think the book brings that out pretty well. And I think that's where people actually benefit from the book, the truth.
Thank you so much. I also I wanted to make one more point about the corporate. I think, see, at one level, we are talking policy, we are talking big things, we are talking change in attitude, perception, whatever. But those are big things. Those take time. Those take, meetings and board of directors and all those things. But at the end of the day, there is a human being. I mean, your corporate could be that one human being. For instance, in my case, when I went and asked for this, permission, a cabin where I could nurse, the corporate, if I had gone about it in a corporate way, then I would be told that the company does not have a policy to grant a cabin and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it was a human being who saw the problem and realized that she could do something about it. So sometimes I feel that corporates, I mean, your superiors, your bosses or whatever, or people in high positions can bend some rules to the extent that it does not really disturb the equilibrium of the larger policies of the company. So sometimes you're just looking for those small rules to be bent, or those small, small acts of goodness. That's all that counts. You're not saying this is the policy, it should not be like this, it should be like that. Sometimes, because most of the time you're just taking it one day at a time. So if there is someone who can just see that and empathize with you and do something about it, then that person becomes the culprit. So it's not really about big things, it's about really small things sometimes,
And on that, that's going to be the last question.
Just an observation saying that things are changing though, and companies are looking at it in a very positive way. I can give you an example of my ex-company, which Mansi was also referring to the Tatas. They started a program called the Second Career, where women can actually come back. If they don't want to work full time, there are opportunities where they can work part time, which is a great move. And by the time they get used to the whole routine, and then once the kids are a little up, they're taken in a kind of a role which is equivalent to what they could have been in. So
but this is again for instance, I was recently on a group. I mean, there's a group called Flexi Moms online. It's quite big and it's quite popular. Basically, places women across corporates, across cities in flexi time job opportunities, and it's new moms are a huge part of its whatever. So I was on a Flexi Mom chat, and now the thing is, one of the questions that I was asked, which I actually had no answers to, is that in many fields, like say IT and HR, I mean basically when you are out of circulation, you are also outdated in terms of relevance, in terms of your skill sets and stuff like that, which you don't you don't fit into a scenario, maybe fast forwarded like 4 years, because you don't have the new skill sets, because technology is changing, IT is changing, and I didn't like even fields like finance and HR, where these women from those fields were asking me these questions, and I felt a bit that I couldn't really address that, because the thing is, in my case, I was a journalist, I could write, so I could write from home, I basically could pitch in whatever I could, but I could freelance and I could send in pieces, I could work on my book. So I could do a lot of things from home, which an average woman who works in in manufacturing or in IT or whatever can't do. So for those women, I mean, there has to be some place where they can update their, get maybe updated on their skill sets, or do an online program or something, some way to just stay relevant. So it is tougher, I think, for other fields than for creative fields to stay relevant, because it's so dynamic. So yeah, that's
more questions than answers. But
yeah,
that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that's what why all of us here in the workplace can mull over this and see how, at least within Godrej and of course around us, make it a more level playing field. So with that, I want to thank Lalita for coming here and sharing her book with us. There's copies of the book down at the Buddha Cafe just before we enter the space office. And of course, everyone is invited to snacks downstairs where Lalita will be there. So if you bought your copy of the book, you can get it signed by her. You can also plague her about other questions. If you read the book, you can meet her and share your favorite bits of the book with her. But thank you. As with everything else, the video of this is going to go up online. But of course, the pleasure comes in being here, hanging out with us, and interacting with us. Please come for our next event. I think the next one is going to be Anurag Kashyap and gangs of, or it's going to be something else. But go online and find out what the next event is, and come for it. It's going to be great fun as always, and tell all your friends about it. Thank you for being here. See you downstairs for snacks.
thank you for being a fabulous audience. It was like the most fun I've had.